Hi, thank you for joining us today. We're going to start with a short, brief video, and then afterwards we'll be on live in order to answer questions.
Hello and welcome to the first applicant webinar for the fifth cycle of CLIR's Digitizing Hidden Collections, Amplifying Unheard Voices program. I'm Louisa Kwasigroch, Managing Director at CLIR, and we are so glad to be here to share some information about the call for applications. We will start by making some introductions, first to this platform and then to our team. To begin, we want to share some notes about using Zoom during this session. You can click the CC Show Captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window to turn on the live transcript. Attendees will be muted throughout the presentation. You're welcome to use chat for general introductions and conversation. To send a message to everyone, change the default from hosts and panelists to everyone. Use the separate Q&A box to ask questions. We will do our best to answer all questions live, and we will also share responses to all questions afterwards. This session is being recorded. The recording, slides, Q&A document, and transcript will be available on the Apply for an Award page of our website within 2 weeks. The Council on Library and Information Resources, or CLIR, is an independent nonprofit organization with a mission to advance enduring and ever-expanding access to knowledge, facilitating collaborations, innovation, leadership, and community connection across international information landscapes. Although we're discussing a funding opportunity, CLIR is not a funding agency. Our programs rely on sponsorships and external funding. For the Digitizing Hidden Collections, Amplifying Unheard Voices program, the Mellon Foundation provides funding, and CLIR serves as the re-granting agency. Just as we receive proposals and reports from grant recipients, we submit them to Mellon and other funders.
CLIR's work is accomplished by a relatively small staff of about 20 geographically distributed individuals. Today's webinar is hosted by the CLIR Grants team, which administers CLIR's active regranting programs, offering support for the entire grant cycle from application to final report. The team includes Sharon Burney, Program Officer located in Midlothian, Virginia, Alyson Pope, Program Officer located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, myself, Jane Larson, Senior Program Associate located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Louisa Kwasigroch, Managing Director located in Chicago, Illinois, and Lizzie Albert, who is unable to join us today, our Community Relations Manager located in Washington, D.C. Our team would like to center today's conversation by acknowledging that as residents of the United States, we are speaking to you from unceded land of many Indigenous peoples. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge and recognize the original and current caretakers of the land, water, and air where I live, the Shawnee and Osage peoples, and all their ancestors and descendants. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on their homelands and ask you to join me in acknowledging all Indigenous communities, their elders both past and present, as well as future generations. May this acknowledgement remind us of our shared commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. Now that we've introduced ourselves, we'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to share your name, organizational affiliation, where you live, and any land acknowledgements in the chat. During the rest of our time together, we'll offer a program overview, including some history of digitizing hidden collections and definitions of core components of this program, some detailed instructions and tips for applying to the program, including what to expect in the 2 parts of this program's application process, and time to answer your questions. Let's now move into an overview of the Digitizing Hidden Collections program.
The 2021 call for applications launched the 3rd iteration of a CLIR program whose roots date back to 2008. What started as a funding opportunity for nonprofit organizations to catalog hidden collections has transformed to continue the work of the digitization program with a thematic focus. The Cataloging Hidden Collections program supported more than 170 organizations with 128 projects documenting over 6 million items. The work of the first iteration of Digitizing Hidden Collections is coming to a close, but still underway, with more than 194 organizations participating in 100 funded projects that have already created more than 9 million master digital files. Amplifying Unheard Voices was awarded funding to 49 projects at 118 organizations in its first 3 cohorts. The 4th cohort's funded projects will be announced this fall. Amplifying Unheard Voices aims to fund projects that propose to digitize materials that deepen public understanding of the histories of people of color and other communities and populations whose work, experiences, and perspectives have yet to be sufficiently recognized in digital collections. These often hidden histories include, but are not necessarily limited to, those of Black, Indigenous, Latine, and other people of color, women, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, and other genderqueer people and communities, immigrants, displaced populations, blind, deaf, and disabled people and communities, and colonized, disenfranchised, enslaved, and incarcerated people. The program's core values reflect its broad objectives and thematic focus. We encourage you to use these core values as you develop projects, ensuring reviewers can see these elements woven throughout your application. Our reviewers will also focus their evaluations of applications on these same values. We hope the core values will encourage and challenge organizations to see how their digitization work can be people-focused. More information on the core values is on the program homepage and in the FAQ section on the Apply for an Award page.
So what do we mean by digitization? All projects submitted for consideration must have digitization as the primary activity, which means the creation of digital representations of unique physical artifacts or objects. While description, such as cataloging or metadata creation, and other work to enhance access, such as transcription or translation, may be included in projects, that work must be supplemental to the digitization work. This program does not support further description, manipulation, or migration to alternative digital formats for content that was born digital or has been previously digitized. The original objects nominated for digitization may be in any format, and projects may combine digitization of materials from a variety of formats, such as books, manuscripts, maps, 3D objects, textiles, various audio and visual formats, and more. Next, what do we mean by hidden? For this program, applicants are asked to convincingly demonstrate that the materials nominated for digitization cannot meaningfully impact public understanding of people, communities, and populations whose work, experience, and perspectives have been insufficiently recognized or attended in the past until those materials are digitized, discoverable, and made accessible. Full online access is desirable in a general sense, but may not always be possible. Instead, applicants are expected to envision modes of access that are ethical, legal, and respectful of the norms of source communities. Explaining how digitization is critical to opening access to the materials is essential. We expect collections nominated for digitization to be in various stages of description, ranging from fully processed or accessions to minimal or no descriptive records available. Applicants are encouraged to design projects that fill description gaps in projects, using digitization workflows to think about how item or collection descriptions can be enhanced, corrected, and created. And finally, what do we mean by collections? For this program, special collections are rare or unique materials housed in secure, monitored environments and made available to the general public. Archives are unique, often unpublished materials associated with a specific individual, topic, location, or organization of historical and/or cultural interest. While the materials nominated for digitization may be in any physical format, they must be owned and held by an eligible organization. Because of the thematic focus, the materials must also have been created by or describe communities and populations whose work, experiences, and perspectives fit the program scope.
You can visit the funded projects page for an idea of the scope and scale of work funded through this program. Be sure to filter for the Digitizing Hidden Collections, Amplifying Unheard Voices program. Now we'll work through how to apply. We have provided all the information you should need on our Digitizing Hidden Collections program pages. We'll share these links throughout the presentation and point to specific resources. As you consider applying to our program, the most essential resource for you is the application guidelines. Combining instructions and insights into the program and its application process, the guidelines also allow you to draft responses to questions before adding them to our online application platform, SM Apply. A view-only Google Doc is linked to the Apply for an Award page. Users without a Google account can access this version and download the document in whatever file format they wish. For those with a Google account, we've also included a link to create an editable copy of the document automatically. An updated version of the guidelines will be shared with those invited to submit a final application to the program.
The initial application comprises of 9 discrete tasks in 4 forms to collect information about your organization and project. The application guidelines address each task in much greater detail, but we'll cover a few important points today. The first task asks you to confirm your organization's eligibility and the official collaborating organizations in your project. Organizations must be academic, independent, or community-based nonprofits located in the United States or associated territory and committed to the collection, preservation, and sharing of rare and unique materials with the general public. We include all eligibility details on our website and in the application guidelines. In the initial application, we do not request any documentation confirming the eligibility of organizations according to our program's instructions. Documentation will be required if you are invited to submit a final application. You can contact us at hiddencollections@clir.org if you have questions regarding organizational eligibility. Of particular note, this program requires that materials nominated for digitization be owned and held by eligible organizations. If you are proposing a project that includes the digitization of materials from multiple eligible organizations, we require that you design a collaborative project.
In the applicant information task, you'll be asked to provide information on the organizations involved in the project. In this initial application round, we're most interested in collecting information on the potential collaborating organizations, if applicable. While collaboration is not a requirement of this program, our core values support authentic partnerships, which can take many forms. For this program, remember that the organization's named collaborators typically contribute materials for digitization and/or provide critical support for creating and maintaining access to digitized items over time. The final application will ask for more descriptive information on the nature of any collaborators. Please explore the application guidelines and our online FAQ for more information on collaborations. All projects must assign at least 1 and no more than 3 principal investigators, or PIs, to the project. PIs are CLIR's primary contacts throughout the application and funding process. Applicants have the option of listing an additional application contact, which we will strongly encourage. The next task asks applicants to supply basic project information. As part of this section, applicants are assigned up to 6 keywords or phrases that best describe the field of study connected to your project. Rather than using general terms like digitization, which we assume will apply to all projects submitted to the program, think of words or phrases that would help others quickly understand the content of the materials nominated for digitization. CLIR staff will use this information as we assign applications to reviewers for evaluation. You will mark that your application is a resubmission if you have submitted an application with the same nominated materials to a previous cycle of the Amplifying Unheard Voices program. As you enter the information on the size of your request, and the project timeline abide by the program's restrictions. All projects should request a minimum of $50,000 and a maximum of $300,000. All projects must be 12, 24, or 36 months and begin on January 1st, 2028. The initial project detail tasks contain the primary content of the initial application. This is where we ask applicants to tell the story of the materials and their organization and explain the need for funding from this program. Each of the 6 prompts allow up to 500 words to engage the reviewers in your story. The responses to each of these prompts connect to the core values of this program, and for those invited, will be used to start building final applications. Reviewers will be using a rubric for the assessment of initial applications, and these prompts will provide the heart of your application in their assessment. The application guidelines offer instructions and deeper insights into these prompts to help guide your application writing. You can also find the reviewer rubric in Appendix B.
For the budget estimate, you will enter your projected project costs broken down by the program's allowable cost categories. All fields are required to be populated, so if you anticipate no expenditures in a given category, enter a 0 in the request amount field and NA or not applicable in the explanation box. Please do not include commas in your amount entries, even if they are in the thousands of dollars. And remember to make sure your total award request matches your answer to the what is the size of the request question in the initial project overview task. The application guidelines provide full details on allowable costs and will provide instructions on how to complete this section of the application. You can also find budget limits and lists of allowable and disallowed costs in Appendix A, Budget of the application guidelines. The budget narrative is meant to serve as a ballpark estimate with the understanding that it may be adjusted if invited to the final application round. There are no service provider quotes required in the initial application. Be sure to review the application guidelines before submitting your budget estimate. Keep in mind that at least 50% of the proposed budget must directly support digitization and ingest activities, which may be performed either by an outside vendor or by internal project staff and detailed in the budget estimate responses. Finally, there is an optional space for additional uploads. Applicants can include appendices with this application, provided their relevance to the project is clear and their length is reasonable given anticipated heavy demands on review panelists' time. Some examples of relevant additional document uploads could be a collections assessment document or donor agreements related to the materials being proposed for digitization. External letters of support are a required component of the final application only. Any letters of support uploaded here will not be accepted for the initial application.
Once you've completed all the required tasks in the online application system, you'll have the option to review and submit your application. This gives you one last chance to review everything you've written and uploaded and go back to make edits. Once you're confident your application is complete, click the Submit Your Application button and click Submit again if prompted. Once submitted, you'll see your application in the My Application space and be able to download a copy for your records. A confirmation email will be sent from the SM Apply system, so check your spam folders if you don't see that within 24 hours. The grants team is always happy to answer any questions about the application submission process. An independent review panel reviews applications for the Digitizing Hidden Collections program. CLIR maintains a largely standing panel of reviewers with expertise in digitization, digital collections, rights, ethics, and reuse, and various academic subjects. Their names and affiliations will be posted on our website by the end of the initial application period. During the initial review process, at least one reader and 2 reviewers will read each application, and a portion of applications will be invited to prepare a final application. Initial applications must be submitted online by October 20th, 2026. All organizations that submit an initial application will be notified if they are invited to submit a final application in mid-February 2027. We provide additional support to those organizations invited to the final round to help develop initial applications into competitive final applications. We plan to publicly announce funded projects in late October or early November 2027.
We anticipate that the size and scope of the final application will be similar to previous digitizing hidden collection cycles. We aim for you to use the groundwork of your initial application to build a complete final application. It may be productive in this stage to think about how you'll expand your responses in the final round, providing more complete descriptions of the collections, their significance and potential impact, rights, ethics, and reuse, institutional capacity, and the project design and long-term sustainability of the digital deliverables. The section that will require the most development will be the project work plan. The final application will also require uploads, including letters of institutional support from your organization and external letters of support from the communities represented in the materials and scholars. We want to emphasize these letters of support are for the final application only and cannot be included as additional uploads in the initial application. The application guidelines for the initial application include the outline of the final application sections shown here to encourage forethought for expanding on the initial application if invited.
Before we switch gears, I'll share a few key reminders to help strengthen your application and avoid common mistakes. The Digitizing Hidden Collections Amplifying Unheard Voices program was designed with clear core values and review criteria, which reviewers will use to assess applications. Before you apply, consider these questions. Is this the right program for your collection? Does the organization meet all the requirements? Can you make a compelling case for why this project should be funded? If the answer is yes, double check that your materials, organization, and expenses are all eligible. Carefully follow the application guidelines. Do not include disallowed costs or ineligible activities. And proofread because clarity matters. Important reminders: applications with disallowed costs, ineligible materials, or that come from ineligible organizations will be disqualified. When in doubt, reach out, hiddencollections@clir.org. Now we'll move to the question and answer portion of the webinar with Program Officers Sharon Burney and Alyson Pope.
Hi, before we move into our question and answer time, we want you to note a short survey about the webinar. This is part of our program assessment, so your honest feedback on the webinar will help us in our future support efforts. We'll share the link in the chat now. And now we're going to turn to your questions, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. Any unanswered questions will be answered in our Q&A document, which will be posted on the program's Apply for an Award page, along with the transcript, slides, and webinar recording. Go into the questions. The first one we have is there a required financial match? There is absolutely no required financial match for this program.
The following question: in the review process, what is the difference between a reader and a reviewer? Our reviewers are here for both stages of the application process. So they review the materials in the initial application, and they review the final application, and they participate in the panel meeting where decisions for invitation and for funding are made. The readers do provide a score as well as the reviewers, and they provide comments and feedback to help enhance the application, but they are not part of the panel meetings. So the review panel takes the reader's score and comments into consideration when making decisions, but the reviewers are the ones that make decisions for invitation and for funding. The readers are not a part of that process.
So is it beneficial to have formal documentation, i.e. contracts, of the agreements between collaborating organizations? If your project decides to use an official collaborator, if awarded funding, each organization lead organization and the collaborators will sign a grant agreement, so there will be somewhat of a formal contract there. Also, in writing your application, reviewers would like to see what the established project activities each collaborating organization will be participating in. And sometimes it's good to also have, and if you make it to the final round, each collaborating organization will have to have institutional letter of support, but that wouldn't come until the final round. And then to work them into your work plan and your project plan as much as possible.
How many applications per cycle usually are awarded? I think historically we've been between 15 and 19. I don't know that we've ever made it up to 20, but that's generally somewhere in the ballpark of 15 to 19.
And that's from initial to final round. For an organization that has historically operated with a small budget, but is now seeking a larger grant to fund a larger project, is there anything specific you would want to see from us to demonstrate that we have the capacity to successfully steward and manage a grant of this size? This is a great question. For smaller organizations, that can show up throughout the application in the work plan, in the digitization plan. You can utilize, you can include staffing as one of your project expenses. If you're using staffing and you have a small organization, reviewers like to see how much of the percentage of time that you'll be donating to your specific project, that it makes sense with the amount of materials that you plan to nominate for digitization, that you can finish this practically in the amount of time that you designate, which would be 1, 2, or 3 year projects. And then how you're handling the overall upkeep of your daily duties and contrast. So say you are using only your staff. If you want to say at 25% of my time is going to go to this, or 50% of my time, that should be reflected in your budget and your budget narrative and your budget details. So they want to make sure that you can do a feasible project with the amount of materials that you nominate. So don't overextend the amount of materials and don't underextend, et cetera.
Can you begin before January 2028? No. I mean, this is not exactly correct. There are some people that maybe are doing some pre-sorting. There's the work that is paid for by the grant must take place within the grant period, and that cannot begin before January 2028. So some folks, like in December 2027, may be putting postings up because they need to hire. They may be getting their inventory in order, things that you could do regardless of whether you had grant funds or not, but actual activities named in and covered by the grant funds have to happen within the grant period.
Yeah. Do we need to know how much the digitization is going to cost in the initial phase? This is a great question too. It could be a two-part. You can use internal digitization, or you can use an external digitization vendor, or a combination of both. Our reviewers, who are all experts in the field, will want to look at the amount of nominated materials, have get an estimate of what your digitization cost may cover. If you're doing in-house, then you'll be using staffing for that. Does the staff that's doing the digitization have experience? Is it practical for one person to do X amount of materials in X amount of time? They want that to make sense. So in the initial round, an estimate is of course fine. In the final round, what would happen if you were using an external vendor, you would go out and you would get a vendor quote to substantiate your budget. But that's not necessary in this first round. So an estimate based on the number of materials is fine right now.
Can you please go into more detail regarding born digital assets? If materials are currently kept on a hard drive but are in an inaccessible format, can funds be used to digitize them into an accessible and then publicly available format? No. Digital to digital reformatting is a disallowed cost. So we would consider those to be born digital rather than physical materials, and they are not being digitized, they're being digitally reformatted, and that would be disallowed.
Will there be an expected project plan format? That will be in the application, and I think there's a page limit amount, and I believe it's upload as a PDF.
I don't believe that's in the initial application.
Oh, is it not? Okay, well, okay, then that will be in the final application phase, my bad. And it will be a page limit, and it will be an upload that you will add to the application.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong about that on the team. I'm trying to remember the guidelines.
Yeah, I believe that's. Can you double check that, Jane? But I think that's right.
Yeah. If you are invited forth to the final application, there are sections that we require you do on specific templates, and that is clearly indicated in that application. Can value-added materials be included in the grant, such as photos and intros of the speakers, other historical materials be included? I'm not sure exactly
Can you
what
add some
this
more?
question means, but I mean, if they're physical materials that are already a part of the collection, then yes, like photos would be something that is an eligible material. And historical materials, I'm assuming, are physical, and that would also be an eligible format. We don't really dictate to you what comprises the collection, as long as the formats are eligible. How you put it together is really up to you, and then how you kind of tell the story of how it fits together helps to make your proposal more competitive. But these are complementary materials that are in the collection and in eligible formats, then there wouldn't be any prohibition against including them.
Do oral histories count as part of the archive that can be digitized? For example, could part of the project be to collect oral histories and then include them in the digital archive, or is it all pre-existing documents? Any born digital materials are not are disallowed. So one, this is not a collecting grant. The primary focus of this grant is digitizing materials that have not been previously digitized or not born digital. However, some people have added oral history collection as part of an outreach deliverable, which has a limit on it, but it would be connected to the particular collection that the materials that you've nominated for digitization. Secondly, if you have oral histories that are on cassettes, VHS, previously, then yes, you can nominate those materials.
I'm curious about the requirement for the materials to be readily available online after digitization. Our public collection contains films from over 130 countries in various consumer-facing formats. Although we own the actual physical copies of the media, we don't hold the copyright, so placing the material online would not be legally permissible in the majority of cases. Are there other ways that we can meet the accessibility requirements in a compelling way? The eligibility for this program requires that you own and hold the materials and that you have the right to make digital copies of them and make them available. If you're not the IP holder, then we would expect to see some kind of documentation indicating that that would be allowed, or we would expect the materials to be in the public domain. So if that's not the case for these materials, then they would not be eligible for this program. I do want to mention that we have a second regranting program called Recordings at Risk that is specific to audio and audio visual materials. and does not have the same community-centered access component as a core value. So that could be a better fit for these materials, because we have more space within that program for materials to not be shared as widely. But you would still need to put forth the claim that you have the rights to make digital copies. And I anticipate that that call would open in November, so that could be a better fit. And I would recommend looking at our website for the details around that program.
The vendor be considered a collaborator. For example, if they were an organization that seeks to hire people with disabilities. First of all, in order to be eligible as an organization, you have to be a nonprofit located in the United States whose focus is cultural heritage and cultural heritage preservation. In that sense, no, it would not. However, if it was a organization, like you can do in-house digitization. So one, they would have to be a nonprofit located in the United States with focus on cultural heritage preservation. They would also have to own and hold the collections that you're nominating for digitization. And outside of that, but you could hire them as a vendor.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
not using
nothing's
them
gonna
as a
stop you.
collaborator.
Yeah, you wouldn't use them as a collaborator. You could hire them as a vendor to do your digitization. That would be the way that I would approach that. If that's what you want. And they can do the job, then hire them.
I would note there are a couple of instances where vendors have acted as collaborators, and that's specific to when the vendor is also related to the ongoing preservation and online access of the
Access to it.
materials. If your vendor is also going to be like your repository home,
Right.
then that might be a collaborative relationship. But if they're just your vendor, that's just a vendor.
Yeah, they're just a vendor. And you can choose any vendor you want.
What might make an organization, arts and cultural, whose main function is not records or archives competitive, is partnering with an archivist and or historian sufficient as long as the collection and organization are eligible? Yes, and perhaps not even necessary. We have made grants to a number of independent organizations in the past, and they're not always necessarily archives. Some of them are community historical associations, um, tribal groups, and they're not directly engaged in records. If by records you mean like audiovisual materials or archives, I would suggest looking at our funded projects page, to see some examples of that, but it's not necessarily a requirement that you are an archive if you meet the eligibility and the collection meets the eligibility.
Our collection concerns work outside of the US. Are these photographs eligible? Yes, as long as you own and hold the photographs. Um, and they are of underheard, under-recognized communities. Yes, that's fine. And I'll do the other one underneath that too. Is there any public component? Are we expected to provide any public program or public display associated with the project? One, you do have to make the metadata publicly available from the digitized materials. Unless there's some cultural sensitivity that prohibits you from being able to do that, then the IP reviewers and the viewers would like to see that you understand those constraints that you have and that you address them in any takedown policy you may need to have. Also, community-centered access is one of our core values. So we do allow you to do outreach materials for that. So we reviewers also like to see that you're sometimes you do that with honorariums for an advisory board that stewards those, can speak to those nominated materials and collections. Sometimes it's symposiums that they do that are connected with that. So yes, they do want to see authentic partnerships, community-centered actions, broad appeal, broad representation, and public knowledge. I think I missed one.
I think it's to describe the impact of, right? We need to do that
Yeah,
one.
yes,
To
yeah, we
describe
understand.
the impact of digitizing our collections, we intend to create educational materials to introduce and help learn from these materials, including online special collections with gallery and metadata in our library website for international accessibility and tours and materials for both community members and school groups and scholars in the general public. However, the guidelines suggest that creating new intellectual materials could be disallowed. Relatedly, photography of built environments and some kind of materials is disallowed, but we plan to digitize 3D objects by photographing them. Could you please explain how to differentiate permissible and disallowed elements of the project regarding creating new materials if they are integral to the digitizing and amplifying goals? So many of the things that you're talking about here are not exactly creating new materials so much as outreach around the digital collection. So, like if you are doing programming or outreach that is specific to the newly digitized assets and their use, like creating a gallery exhibition or creating curriculum that you're sharing with students, that is allowed because we consider that to be programming and outreach directly related to the collection that you are digitizing. You can also digitize 3D objects by photographing them if they are already part of your collection. What we mean in the guidelines regarding that is sometimes folks want to do like 3D mapping
Anytime.
of built environments, like a whole cemetery or the like, but that we don't consider that to be a collection. But like if you have artifacts in your collection and you are going to photograph them and make them into 3D objects, that is not a disallowed cost. But I understand how there can be some confusion around that. And honestly, if you have specific questions like that, the best thing to do is to ask us by contacting us at hiddencollections@clir.org and we can give you specifics. But I don't see anything in what you've named here that's disallowed as long as you're within program guidelines regarding the outreach cap.
I think that's 20K.
Yes.
Is there any public component? Oh, I'm sorry, we already did that one. Our team has already started digitizing selected records from the collection, although most remain undigitized. Would this affect our eligibility or can the grant support the remaining work and expansion of the project? Yes, no, this does not make you ineligible. You can do the remaining collections, digitization that is necessary for that collection. What will happen is that you will have to explain to us what's in the collection already. You would just explain that clearly when we ask you about what do you plan to digitize, how many records are left to digitize, et cetera, et cetera.
How specific do the reviewers expect to see in describing the community and group of people who benefit from the digitized content? Do we need to specify the region or identity? I would. I don't necessarily know that we call that a requirement, but to make the application competitive, particularly around the voices component, it's generally helpful for the panel to have the best idea of whose voices you are amplifying. And additionally, because of the authentic partnerships component of the core values, if you're dealing with specific communities that you're not a part of, they'll want to know that you are already engaging with them and that you fully understand who they are and how to talk about them. Um, so I would say this is a piece where I would not come in vague. Um, I think it would behoove you to be as specific as you are able.
Yeah, tell a compelling story. Public knowledge and broad representation are two of the core values that they want to see in that area. So you want to know how this is going to benefit the good of the whole entire this community that whose stories you want to tell, and that you're already entrenched in doing work in these communities or have established relationships with them previously. That is something that the reviewers really, really take seriously. Are legal fees for obtaining a common license covered in the grant? Must these be obtained before final application or can this be done after? Legal fees are disallowed costs,
Also, Creative Commons licenses
are
are free.
free. So Do we have that on? We have that on our website, correct?
I believe we're linked to their page. So
Yeah.
Creative Commons is a separate entity. Maybe we can drop a link in the chat.
Yeah.
But their licensing is free, and Jane says that we have it linked on the web.
Okay, thank you, Jane. And then also, yeah, you need to have an idea of those things prior to applying, because we will there'll be an IP and our rights, ethics, and reuse examination of the project.
Sorry, this question is long, so I was trying to
Yeah,
read. I was trying to
I
read
was going
it
to
so I
say
could.
things. I'll go to the next one while you read that one.
Okay.
Can activities such as audio transcriptions or OCR, as well as extended metadata or entity extraction, be considered part of the digitization process, or do they need to be included in a different section? Transcription, translation, all of that is an allowable course, and metadata. That'll show up also in your budget, right? And it'll also show up in, once again, we don't have the project plan and all of that yet, but in the final application, you will upload a digitization plan, a project plan, a work plan, sorry, a digitization plan, and they'll also want to ask you about your metadata information in different sections in the final application, and you can include those in your budget. Sorry.
I'm going to hit this question, but I'm going to
Okay.
shorten it a little bit. I'm representing the Blue Lake Rancheria, a federally recognized Native American tribe in northwestern California. The tribe was terminated in 1958 and then reinstated to federal recognition status in 1983. Since then, the tribe has made a concerted effort to rebuild, and has had multiple cases of litigation, ranging from local rural community to Tilley versus Hardwork U.S. Supreme Court case, in order to be reinstated to federal recognition status. There are thousands of documents within the Blue Lake Rancheria Tribal Court ranging from 1920 to 2026, which have never been stored digitally. Would digitizing these records along with partnering with other local tribes in the region to do the same be applicable to this program? The answer is yes. There's not actually a more complicated answer to that, even though it's
Yeah.
a long question. Yeah, you
No,
guys are eligible.
yeah, eligible, yes. How extensive do the plans for public programming and outreach from the digitized collection need to be a part of the initial application? Is it beneficial to make outreach deliverables in the application along with accessibility goals like audio description, OCR? Yeah, we don't expect you to have everything figured out in this initial application, but we do want you to have some of your deliverables that you plan to do ready to discuss in this application. They want to community-centered action is a very focused part of this. So they want to know, how are you going to make these deliverables accessible to the community? What kind of relationships you have in the community? What kind of programming you want to have? You won't have to do, you'll have to have an ideal of your budget in this initial round. But you won't have to have it all figured out. If that makes sense. But yeah, you can include that in it. But I would hope that your outreach and public program is more than just audio description and OCR. So sometimes people do symposiums, sometimes people build curriculum from that. Sometimes people do a conference on the nominated materials. You can get creative with that.
If we applied for a Recordings at Risk grant in the past for this collection, is that considered a reapplication? No. So when we ask if you are a resubmission, we mean specific to this program and specific to the same materials that you nominated before.
The source community wants the collection to be digitized, but does not want it published online. All requests for images and access must be pre-approved by the community. Would the project be ineligible? It wouldn't be ineligible in some instances, depending on cultural sensitivity. Sometimes we see this a lot with indigenous communities. You cannot make the metadata publicly available, or it may be behind a paywall, or it may be It just may not be able to be published publicly or for selected communities. You would just have to explain that clearly, so that the intellectual property reviewer and the other reviewers who assess rights, ethics, and reuse understand that you have communicated that clearly, you have takedown policies ready to go, and how to handle that. It wouldn't make you ineligible. As far as making it competitive, that's on you to explain it and why.
And you will have to provide some basic metadata so
Yeah.
that people
Yeah.
at least know that that the materials exist and that they could come to you and seek permission. How should we frame the fact that the files are digitized but not yet in a true archival lossless format? Those would not be eligible under this program because we do not do digital to digital reformatting.
If we intend to capture the process we go through to digitize our materials in order to share with similar organizations or part of a national organization, would the cost of documenting and development of training programs be all right to include in the budget? Training programs are fine. You can include that. Documenting? What do you mean by the cost of documenting? I don't know what they mean by that.
I don't either.
Can you put in the
Can you
chat?
or send us an email
Or,
with more
yeah, or
details?
you can send us an email about that part to Hidden Collections. Yeah, send us an email.
We would be digitizing symposia lectures. Is that eligible? We do not make any rules about the content of your material as long as they fit the program values and organizational eligibility. So if the symposia lectures are on obsolete or physical format and you own and hold them, we would treat them the same as any other nominated materials as long as they amplify unheard voices and meet the material eligibility and institutional eligibility criteria.
Ours holds a collection of personal photographs contributed by the LGBTQIA plus communities, elders, along with their oral histories, with permission to reproduce and publicly share them, although the interviewees may retain ownership and copyright. Would digitizing creating public access to this collection be eligible, or does CLIR's owned and held requirement mean the applicant must own the physical originals? When we say own and held, it does mean that you must own and hold the physical originals. They could be a collaborator with you on this project if they own and hold the physical deliverables. That would be a way that a lot of people do that.
Would the community of addiction treatment providers or addicts be an eligible community? Yes, we do not have an exhaustive list of amplifying unheard voices, but we've certainly done projects related to homeless folks in the past, incarcerated folks in the past. I don't think, I think this would be a similarly underheard or marginalized group in the context of the program, and you're open to make that argument in the voices section of the application.
Would you please share examples of conservation treatments for stabilization of materials that fall within the scope of this grant? Example A, this is a long question. A group of original prints on thin Asian papers with major creasing and in some case also tears. These prints would benefit from humidification and flattening treatment before digitization. However, to reduce risk before flattening, a treatment plan would first perform dry surface cleaning, wet cleaning, mending or liming. Conserving the prints would reveal hidden aspects, yes. A large, highly significant early drawing of artist's wife mounted on board has major tears, more extensive treatment. Yes. We just want you to know that when you're creating your budgets at some point, we want, we're doing the 50 on this one, right? The 50% of your expenses should go towards digitization costs. Primary focus of this program is digitization. Everything else fits in after it. You don't want your conservation and stabilization to be the most expensive part because that's not what this program is focused on. But yes, we expect some of that to happen. So both of those, yes, are eligible.
Yeah, I mean, mitigation and anything that's necessary for the materials to be digitized is fully allowed. Are there any parameters around the size of the collection? For example, does the collection need to be a certain number of objects? No, but the scope of your project needs to match the program parameters of being between $50,000 and $300,000. So, like, if you had 8 photos, it would be really wild to see what budget you would have to come up with to make that be at least a $50,000 project. So the reviewers are going to look at the scope of your proposal and how it fits within the funding ask, and the funding ask needs to be within the program parameters. So it's really based on the cost, and the cost of digitization varies widely based on the material that you're working with. So you will kind of need to figure out an estimate of the digitization costs and what the necessary size or scope of collection would be to make it fall within the grant parameters.
Yeah, and on the same aspect, also we want your the size that you choose. Don't try to digitize a ridiculously large amount of objects that you can't get done in a 2 or 3 year period.
Yeah, you're also time limited. It needs
Yeah,
to be able to be achieved in the term of the grant.
yeah. And then the last question is, would airing segments of digitized materials with context on Pacifica stations be acceptable outreach promotion? Yes, it would. That'd be a great one.
Oh,
Okay.
and it's time.
Yes, and it's time.
Sorry.
Your photos. Yeah, no. Who's in the chat? Okay. Hey, let's get Jane has some reminders for everybody before we head out.
Yes. So we will be hosting a Q&A webinar on September 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll share that registration link in the chat, and it also will be on our program's Apply for an Award page. So we invite you to bring any remaining questions that you have or just come and listen in. The initial application, remember, is due October 20th, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. And finally, please submit your feedback through the webinar survey and contact us at hiddencollections@clir.org if you have any questions. Thank you again for joining us today, and take care and happy grant writing.